Welcome to the CBIA BizCast. I'm your host, Ali Warshavsky, and this podcast is now sponsored by Google. Today, we have a very special guest joined by Travis Crisp. He's the Chief Marketing Officer of Avelo Air, now flying out of Tweed, New Haven Airport. Welcome to the podcast, Travis.
Hi, Ali. Great to be here. Thank you.
It's great to have you here. Now, tell us a little bit about the history of Avelo.
Sure. Avelo started flying in April of 2021. The airline is the brainchild of Andrew Levy, who was one of the co-founders of Allegiant Airlines, one of the most successful airlines in the country by a lot of measures, including profitability of airlines over the last 20 years. Allegiant developed a really great business model out of Las Vegas. And Andrew spent many years there and then moved on to, kind of create his own airline, really an entrepreneur at heart, and, take some bits and pieces of Allegiant along with, some other ideas that he had for where we might fly and how we might operate. So we started service out of Burbank, California, one of the convenient airports in the Los Angeles area. And the idea of flying to these small convenient airports like Burbank and to places like Eugene, Oregon, and Pasco, Washington, and Redding, California, are low fares to airports that historically have not had low fares, and be able to deliver really a smooth, low fare travel experience to places where people really want to go and get away from some of the challenges of the bigger airports. So next up then was, where else do we fly? And New Haven came out as a really interesting first base for the East Coast. So I'm a longtime airline network planning, background, and New Haven has had high fare service on regional jets to a few hubs here and there. It was really known, of course, for being the home for Yale. But other than that, the airport has kind of a short runway set up, and so it's very limiting in terms of what kind of service would be there. And so many people within Connecticut have never even flown out of New Haven because there weren't many flights and it was very expensive. So we know that there's been in this kind of Bermuda Triangle between LaGuardia and Hartford and maybe White Plains or Providence, several million people who've really struggled to get low fare service without a really long drive. I mean, it's hard to get to those other airports. And so we came up with the right aircraft type. We have these 737-700s, so it's not a regional jet, but it's a little bit smaller 737. It holds 147 people. That was just right for the runway length at New Haven. So you really can't operate a low fare airline without a bigger jet like that. Mm-hmm. You just can't do it on a regional jet. You can't carry enough people to make it economical. So with the right aircraft type and the right airport right there in that kind of Bermuda Triangle where New Haven sits, the natural thing to do from anywhere in the Northeast is to say, well, where do we go? How do we get to Florida? And that's really kind of what we led with. Is we added 6 cities to Florida last November of 21, and so it was a pretty big start to that many cities all at once. With a smaller footprint there at Tweed with the terminal there, and we kind of estimated that there would be strong demand for that, and sure enough there was. And so right out of the gate, right from the very first flights, the reception has just been terrific. We were running very full flights November, December, January, peak season, mm-hmm. To get down to Florida, of course, and get out of the cold weather. And so that growth has just, as planned, if it was successful, we would add more and more cities. And now we're up to 14 cities out of New Haven. And the reception has just been really terrific. So we're really grateful for that.
It's quite impressive to drive up 95 now because you see all those billboards, and I believe Charleston is one of them and some other locations down south. You said the demand was high at obviously Christmas time. It's cold and kids are on break, so people are heading to Florida. Did you feel the effects of the pandemic at all, or was there still pretty high demand to get out of New England?
There was really demand right away. Now, when we launched in November, we were all kind of coming out of the original virus, and so demand picked up right away. But then Delta came along, and so whatever that was, February or so, there was a bit of a dip again across our whole network and for all the airlines, and everybody kind of held their breath again. But we powered through it, and we kind of broke out of there in March and April. And I mean, gosh, by the time we got to March and April of this year in particular was just amazing. And so, the bookings continue to do really well. And as I said, I mean, the reception in New Haven couldn't have been better. Like you said, we get a lot of comments about the billboards. We've got partnerships with UConn, University, New Haven, Yale, and other organizations, kind of institutions around the entire state. And so it is really a kind of a statewide effort. And the awareness has been great. The PR and media that we've received has been really super. And so it couldn't be any better as we sit here right now.
So I want to go back a little bit. First flight was April of 2021, but that was in Burbank, correct?
That's right. And
the first flight out of Tweed was in
November.
November. Okay. So still so new, obviously seeing a lot of growth. How is the Tweed airport handling it? Did you make any major changes, or I should say, did they? Because for so long, there weren't too many flights. Now it seems like there are so many options. How is the airport traffic?
Right. Well, the airport's doing a great job. So it's operated by Avports, is this third-party company that operates Tweed Airport, and they've been a really terrific partner. So when we got the notion of maybe we would do New Haven, we engaged with Avports and with the city and with the state and said we need to know that we're going to be able to do this and grow effectively in a measured way over time. And so there was a plan agreed between all of those parties that there would be improvements to the existing facility. Then down the road there would be a runway length addition, and there would be another terminal. And so some of the dates and the timing for some of the second pieces are a little bit TBD, but there is an overarching plan to kind of make those things happen. And some of that was we got to wait and see if we build it, will they come? And so so that part has happened. So there was certainly a lot of renovation to the existing terminal, which has been there for a long time, and it was built for the smaller amount of traffic that the airport used to get. And so there was a build out, kind of a Restaurant Impossible kind of build out of that terminal that went on, last year. And so it's sized now, we've made pretty good use of about every square foot of that terminal. And so we're managing through that. There's been expansion to the parking. There's going to be continued expansion to the parking, because the parking is pretty tight right now, given how busy it's become. But there's some options for kind of some long-term parking and some alternatives there. So that's being managed well. The airport and Avports have been really terrific partners. We've gotten amazing support from all the way from senators, Congress people, the governor, lieutenant governor, all the way certainly down to the mayor. It's been really great. So it's been a mutually beneficial partnership, and we want to be good neighbors and good partners, and so we focus hard on that.
Yeah, it's definitely tough as someone who lives nowhere near Broadly, but closer to LaGuardia and JFK to get there, just because the cost is so astronomical to take a car or to park. Right. So very grateful that you guys are here. And I believe our producer, who's on the other line and listening in, she's already flown Avelo. So
very good.
Yeah. So you have 30 destinations right now, but 14 are out of Connecticut or to Connecticut. And then the other 16 are out of the California location.
Right. That's right. So we're spread out pretty well. And we just announced in the last week or two that we're opening a new base at Orlando. So the demand from New Haven to Orlando has been amazing. And we know we've announced service from Orlando to Wilmington, North Carolina, in addition to our New Haven to Wilmington service, which begins on June 30th. And so we'll look to continue to expand in Florida, just given the pretty amazing population migration that continues to happen from all over the country, but especially the Northeast down to Florida. And so we see a lot of opportunity there, and a lot of that comes from the success we've seen in New Haven itself. So we're going to continue. We've got a number of airplanes coming. And as we go and develop and time kind of moves on, we look and analyze different options for where we're going to send those airplanes. And, so far, continue to add out of New Haven, has been really terrific. And so we'll do a little bit more of that, I think, out of Orlando and places like Wilmington, and kind of see how that goes.
Keep it coming. Obviously we're in a tough spot right now with these gas prices. I mean, to fill up a car, let alone a plane, is tough. How are you guys faring and being able to keep flights affordable?
Well, it's really challenging. We really pride ourselves on having affordable fares, and and we like having the billboard on 95 say, $39, $49, $59, down to here and there, and customers love it, and we love it, and we want to provide that service, and we're able to do that because we have really low costs. You bring in a certain amount of revenue, and you got to have your costs below that, and that's how business works. And so we like that very much, and we appreciate that our customers do. So with fuel doing this, it's been hard because we have to raise our fares, to cover fuel, and we have raised the fares. So it's not 39 and 59, 69, 79. And it's still, a lot better than you'll get if you got to go, to the other airports, and those guys are having to raise their fare, and their costs are a lot higher. And so their fares got to be a lot higher. And so we're still a great bargain compared to that, but it's not as great, and you could say that about lots of businesses right now with inflation. So we're managing through that. It is hard to keep up with fuel, though. Fuel is just a big problem. The jet fuel markets there's a lot of voodoo that goes on with jet fuel, and whether you're a West Coast, Gulf Coast, East Coast, it's hard to know what's really going on. Then you layer in taxes on top of that, and the way certain states run their tax regimes, it gets even more difficult. So we're doing it. We're hanging in there. We're keeping fares much lower than the alternatives, but we're certainly looking forward to getting through this cycle and being able to get into our sweet spot of as low fares as we possibly can. But the demand is still there. The demand is super strong. On the revenue and passenger side, we continue to do really well, and people are still going. And so that's great. And so we're trying to do everything we can to help keep it as affordable as we can.
And not only are gas prices skyrocketing, we've been talking about so many businesses experiencing a labor shortage. And just this weekend I was flying, and we had a flight attendant that had to sprint across the terminals to make a second flight to be the second one on ours. Then we didn't have anyone at the bridge gate to let us on. And a lot of that is, and the pilot said, it's just there's no one there to work. Are you guys experiencing the same thing? How are you managing?
Yes and no. I mean, across the economy, we all know that's a real challenge. And airlines are certainly very impacted by that. We have been extremely proactive in ensuring that we've got enough staff and crew members to fly and operate at the airports. And so we haven't, we're working hard on it. We're trying to stay out in front of it. We haven't had any, serious situations like you've read about with some of the other airlines. The biggest issue for all airlines by far is the pilot shortage. And the pilot shortage has kind of become mainstream now. This has been brewing for 5 or 6 years. It got, with the pandemic, there was some temporary relief, would actually made it worse because a lot of the airlines bought out some of their older pilots and had them go ahead and leave. And now everybody very much regrets doing that, because now the pilot shortage has come back worse than before the pandemic. At Avelo, we're not seeing that directly right now, but we've had to get very aggressive on our pilot pay rates in order to ensure that we've got enough pilots to cover things. So we got 2 things going for us. We have increased those rates, which is more pressure on the fares, but we're happy to do that for pilots for sure. But the other component about that is that we do fly 737s, which is a mainline big jet, and it's what pilots want to fly. For the segment of pilots that like to come home every night and not be out on the road all the time, Avelo is a great option, and there are plenty of pilots like that. Who've got families or whatever. They've some of the younger pilots maybe I want to fly to Singapore and things like that. So okay, they go do that with United. But for us, it's a big jet. It's not a regional jet, so you're not kind of bouncing around waiting until someday. Gosh, I want to fly that 737. You fly a 737 right away with us. So we've managed that very well so far, but we have to watch it carefully. It's a real issue, that's affecting the entire industry, and so there's a lot of work that goes on to keep us out ahead of that curve.
Keep you in the air. Yeah.
Right.
So you mentioned, I never would have thought of this, and it's probably because I'm not a pilot or anything like that, but being able to actually sleep at home at night and be a pilot is something probably a lot of them aren't able to do. And so anytime you bring in Avelo Airlines anywhere, like to Tweed or to Burbank, you actually bring maybe more people to that community as well, right? Who are then making that place home because that's their home base.
Sure. We've got about 150 crew members in New Haven now. So those are all brand new jobs, from pilots to flight attendants to mechanics, airport people, the whole gamut. We have all of that and growing. So we're really proud of that. And it's certainly true, for our pilot ranks. We've got new people that, living in the area that weren't there before. And, this is, a lot of skilled labor. And so that's really great. So we really make a strong contribution to the economy, both in terms of all the crew members that I just spoke of, and then of course of everybody that we bring in, and we're bringing a fair, the majority of our customers are flying, in the New Haven example, are flying out of New Haven to these other cities. But there's a sizable portion of the plane is people flying that originate in Raleigh and Chicago and Baltimore and Florida, and they're coming to New Haven. And previously they were flying into those other places. And, I'll tell you that, we heard examples of Yale, who would tell us it's challenging sometimes to get faculty, because they wanted to be able to fly out of New Haven, and it was hard for them to have to, take these longer trips. And so they really appreciate having us there. And there's plenty of companies in the area that are telling us that as well. So it's great for the economy, in both directions.
Yeah. And you mentioned Raleigh. Are you guys now flying there?
We are. We do have New Haven, Raleigh. It's off to a great start.
One of my favorite places in this country.
We hit the vacation centers, Myrtle, Savannah, Charleston, all the Floridas, but also now places where it's not just for business travel, but more business oriented places. Yeah. Raleigh, Chicago, Baltimore, Nashville, doing really well. So we've got a nice mix.
Well, that's great to hear. And you touched on a lot of this already, but I want to end with a positive. Where do you see your partnership with Tweed in the next 5 years?
So, right, as mentioned, there are plans that have been put together with the governments and avports, and Avelo, to say, hey, in a measured way, in an agreed upon way, we'd like to, expand the footprint, within reason. It's never meant to be, some, big airport hub, big airline hub or anything like that. But we really would like to, kind of, optimize what we have today and make the best use of the facility, that we have today. And then at the right time, make some of those, make some of those growth plans happen. As discussed. And, as always with those things, there's a lot of give and take and a lot of work that needs to be done to plan those things out and make those happen. But we hope to do it in a really, in a responsible way that's, great for the economy, but also, certainly sensitive, to neighbors and things like that. We want to be a good neighbor. And so, I think over, 5-year time horizon is a good time horizon to talk about. We expect to, kind of roll these things out incrementally, kind of over that time period.
Well, Travis, it's been great to learn about Avelo and its growth, and I hope to be flying on Avelo soon, especially now that I know you're going to Raleigh and to Charleston as well. It is notoriously expensive to fly to Charleston, so it's really good.
Not anymore.
And that's what we like to hear. So thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks, Ali. Okay, good to talk to you.
You too. And thanks for listening to this week's BizCast. You can listen and subscribe to our podcast that is sponsored by Google on Apple, YouTube, and for more episodes, head on over to CBIA.com.